Thank you for joining our JNUC session and accessibility conversation. We will be introducing ourselves, sharing our personal experiences with accommodations at work, how technology has evolved from our own experiences, and leave you with our closing thoughts.
Hi, I'm Tim Kilburn. I'm legally blind. I do have some light perception, but not much more. I use VoiceOver, Apple's built-in screen reader, on Mac, iPad, and iPhone. I work for the Fort McMurray Catholic School Division as their technology consultant, managing technology, including Macs and iPads with Jamf Pro. When I'm not working, I enjoy travel, although that's not particularly easy right now. I enjoy spending time with my wife and my family hiking, reading, music, and just definitely helping other people with their computer issues.
Hello, my name is Don Mueller, and I have a severe to profound hearing loss. I wear hearing aids to help me hear, and I use assistive technologies and sign language interpreters to help me with my day-to-day job. I am a sales engineer here at Jamf, helping others, organizations succeed with their Apple management. When I am not working, my wife and I are busy with two wonderful kids, and they are curious while playing sports, exploring parks, and enjoying many family activities. Today, you will hear different use cases for Apple devices and accessibility. Our personal stories are how we found success with the use of Apple devices. Each person will have varying experiences and opinions on the tools demonstrated, and Apple's accessibility tools are not limited to what is shown here today.
Thanks, Don. I'll start my portion of a demonstration by showing you some tools that I use, being VoiceOver, and how it's used well within the Jamf Pro interface when Jamf Pro has been coded well, and it makes it much easier for me to do my job. So we'll start that first video, and then we'll move on to something after that. Tasks in Jamf Pro on the web.
Safari. Application. Close. Safari. Google. Touch ID. Tim Kilburn.
Here's my fingerprint.
Visited link. Image. A configured management account feature is
a
not
bunch of
recommended.
keyboard
Search.
shortcuts here.
Blank. Heading level 3. Enrollment. Heading level 3. Group. Visited link. Smart computer groups. Table. 3. Count. Update to Catalina. Link. Row 50.
Sorry,
Smart
in this
computer
situation,
groups.
I had a couple.
Item chooser menu. Verticals. Link. Link. Table. 7 columns.
See the
Intake.
criteria.
Blank. Criteria. Operator. Value. Blank. New blank. Computer group. Member of column. Students. Father Mercray
So this one
Library
is just
Support Center.
I'm wanting to upgrade some computers that were that were in Mojave, and I needed to put them up to
Frame
Catalina.
0.
So that's the smart group that I created.
Heading level 3.
I'm
Groups.
using some.
Heading level 3. Visited link. 159 of 150 item chooser menu. No items in vertical splitter. Visited link. Install Catalina. Visited link.
And
Install
then you can
Catalina.
see here that I can use install Catalina.
Once per computer. Check-in. Column ready to update to Catalina. Column
And
5.
those things are ready to update to Catalina. So it
Check-in. Once per computer.
was a different
Column 3.
smart group that checked if everything was downloaded and it was ready
Space.
to go.
Install Catalina. Link.
So
Column
it
2.
goes into
Policies.
here. If you look inside, then I have a
Item chooser menu. Verticals. 11 items. Link. Scripts 1 script. Set link.
script
Scripts
that
1
tells
script.
it
Link.
what
Scripts 1
to
script.
do, and I'll quickly
Frame.
show you that script.
159 of settings. Visited item chooser menu. Visited link. Scripts. 2. Visited link. Scripts. Item chooser menu. 8. Link. Mac OS. Erase install Catalina. Link. Mac OS. Erase install Mojave. Mac OS. Install Catalina. Link.
So I
Row
have
31
this
column 1.
script here.
Visited link. Image. Jamf Pro item chooser menu. 7 items. 7 items. Visited link. Scripts. Clickable. Visited link. Scripts.
Oops.
Item chooser 7 items. Visited. Scripts. Script. Clickable. Script.
And you can see here I've just grabbed a script that's freely available from Jamf, and I use that script to install Catalina onto those machines. You'll notice quickly that I did lots of moving around. I used something called the item chooser. I used heading navigation table navigation and everything within Jamf Pro, so that you could quickly get an idea of how fast I can maneuver around here. And that's telling you of or that's showing you or demonstrating an example of a well coded page that is properly set for people using VoiceOver.
Menu X Google Drive. Stop recording.
So you'll notice during that demonstration that VoiceOver is talking quite quickly, and I often don't let VoiceOver finish what it's saying before I move on to the next, and that's just due to familiarity. I know I've done that so many times, some of those steps, and I know exactly what VoiceOver is going to say. So as it's saying it, I get a gist that it did say the right thing, and then I move on. And you'll notice that VoiceOver talks fairly fast, but not super fast. It might make it difficult for you guys to understand, but I've got so used to it that it's easy for me to understand. So that was with something working really well. Now there's an app that we use when we're managing Jamf things called Jamf Admin. And Jamf Admin was coded without accessibility in mind, and you'll see during this next demonstration that there are some situations where I can't really do what's necessary within that application that I have.
Finder, desktop, applications, application, Jamf Pro folder, open, Jamf Recon application,
Oops.
Jamf Admin application, open,
Jamf Admin. I believe I've showed this one
Jamf Admin
before.
window, accessing keychain, Jamf Admin 10.30.1 window, toolbar,
So I go in here, toolbar, and I want to replicate things, and I can't because
vertical scroll bar, configurations,
it's not coded
packages,
in a way
050540461, vertical scroll bar,
that
repository,
it actually sees everything.
close, dimmed button,
So I can't do things. I do have a few workarounds that I can do once in a while, but officially you see a bunch of things, but VoiceOver doesn't see these at all. So it makes it very difficult for me to use Jamf Admin, and there are a lot of tasks that would be easier with Jamf Admin, but I can't use it.
menu X time machine, Google Drive, menu, stop recording.
Okay, in the last demonstration I'm going to show, I connected my iPhone, and what I've done though is I've blacked out the screen, so you're only going to see me navigating throughout there. You'll hear VoiceOver in an Australian voice this time, talking and going through things, but you're not actually going to see the navigation of the iPhone. So it just gives you an idea of what I might see or what I don't see, but still I'm able to do things. There are some things I mentioned on here, like there's a back button that you can't find from an audio or audible point of view, but it is visually there. So we'll move forward with this next video. Something on my iPhone
Utilities folder.
where I've
21
got an
apps.
app that's
Clock. Deco.
somewhat accessible, but also
Deco.
has some
Welcome
problems.
to Deco.
So this is the
Kilburn's
app that
Airport.
controls my Wi-Fi router at home.
Router settings. Wi-Fi. Router settings.
So if I go into router
All
settings,
deckers are online.
you'll see that there's the different
Utility room. Bedroom. Online. Living room.
the three
online.
mesh Wi-Fi devices
Bedroom.
are
online.
there,
Utility room. All decker. Kilburn's Airport.
but
Kilburn's
there's a back
Airport.
button somewhere here that
All deckers are online. Kilburn's Airport. All deckers. Kilburn's Airport. All living room. Online.
but I move around my finger on the
All deckers are
screen
online.
and I can't find that back button at all. There are
Characters. Navigation style. Describe images. On. Screen recognition.
I
Off.
could try turning screen recognition on, which is another accessibility feature Apple's put on the phone.
Kilburn's Airport. Back. Button.
Oh, there I can find the back button,
Back.
but
Kilburn's Airport. Describe images. Screen recognition. Off.
there
Deco.
are inherent difficulties when I use that screen recognition, and sometimes it actually ends up freezing things up instead of doing it. I'll
Menu
Turn
extras,
this off now.
stop recording.
Okay, so that last video, you really didn't see anything. which was part of the plan for that. But it's just demonstrating that for me, I was trying to find that back button and I just couldn't find it until Apple had in iOS 14 added something called screen recognition, which tries to make apps that are not very accessible a little bit more accessible, but it's not perfect. It did actually find the back button, but sometimes it makes it less accessible in some other ways. That's it for that part of the demonstration. We'll move over to Don.
So when I joined Jamf, I actually had faced some challenges with the videos within the Jamf training catalog. So as you can see in this example, I had to click play to have the ability to click the closed caption button. And then when it started, I had to click the closed caption button to hide that overlay so I could actually see the captioning. Then I would start the video all over again to watch the training video. Even though the accommodation was there, the user experience was a challenge and added time to my workflow, which really wasn't motivating. So I was fortunate to provide the feedback, and the team responsible for this training catalog provided a fix to a better user experience. This allowed me and anyone else dependent with closed caption to watch the videos without adding more time to complete the training. And with current technologies, I actually use interpreters over video phone to have regular conversations. So the way I do this is I actually join my meetings from my Mac, and then instead of using the computer audio, I dial in to my main number, which is actually will be answered on my iPad to join in with the audio. The people I talk to do not know that I actually have an interpreter present on the iPad during our conversation on the Mac. I'm able to keep the conversation more natural without the need to slow down for comprehension. This setup has actually helped me as an accommodation for me to do my job.
When I was going to school, to university about 40 years ago or so, there wasn't the technology we have now with respect to computers. There were computers, but the technology wasn't there for screen readers and that kind of thing. So I used to have to tape all my lectures and have readers sometimes to read textbooks, those kinds of things to me, and I would have to listen to those recordings later. So if you think about it, I would go to an hour or an hour and a half lecture, and then I'd have to take that recording home, listen to it again, and take notes from that. And that would cause me to have, take up twice as long as my other students that I was in the class with. It took me twice as long to actually gather the material and take notes than anybody else. It made a lot of work for me in university. As technology improved, though, there's so much more that makes it easier with your technology, the accessibility of books, the accessibility of the web. Now here, with COVID and all, it's been so much easier for me to shop for groceries, because a lot of the grocery stores ended up making it an online shopping experience more readily available for everybody. But it actually helped me as a blind person to be able to do my part within the family, and my wife or daughter didn't have to do all the shopping. I could do it myself as well by filling out what was needed in the grocery list on the web, and then we could get it delivered. Also, when it comes to Christmas presents or buying gifts for birthdays, I can use Amazon or any other online shopping venue, and I can purchase things, and it makes it a little easier. That makes the surprises better for my wife or my kids, and it doesn't have to be them always doing the buying for me. Also, there's a picture here of me in a lab of IMAX, and this happens to be one of the labs that I support in one of the schools I work in. And those IMAX would be a part of our Jamf instance, and I'm there to support the kids both from a Jamf point of view and if there's any other technical difficulties. Now, without these accessibility improvements, especially within Apple products where these accessibility ideas and the accessibility concepts are built right into the Mac OS or the iOS and iPad OS, it would be much more challenging for me to support. So whereas I can just do these things the same as the kids, except that it's, as you could tell, my voiceover is talking and not just doing it visually. Don?
Thank you, Tim. And like Tim, back when I was actually in college, I was actually fortunate to have volunteers for note taking during my classes that I've taken. A nuance that not everyone actually realizes, but I actually had to make frequent trips to the accommodations office to pick up inches and stacks of carbon copy papers, which allowed my note takers to write notes. And then when they were done, they would rip off the second piece of paper that had the notes and provide it to me so I can have review to study. And then there would also be times where I would actually have to make trips to the library and make copies of the notes in case I didn't have access to the carbon copy paper that I needed. And now with current technology, iPad, it actually didn't exist when I was in college. And seeing how inexpensive an iPad and pencils is nowadays, this setup would have been a great asset to time saving in my day. It's just a simple way of emailing it to me, or they could just airdrop the notes between me and the note taker. Another example, our family actually rented a video through iTunes back in the early 2000s when digital movie streaming started and DVDs were more popular back then. We came to learn of a movie that when we rented it, it was not actually closed captioned. So, in my personal experience, I actually remember calling AppleCare and sharing the recent released movie. It was not closed captioned. The rep had shared with me about Apple's commitment to accessibility. And then I just asked, can you just take a look and see what latest videos are actually closed captioned and tell me how many there are? To the rep's reaction, they were actually surprised because there were actually not that many that were current out there. And I'd like to think this, but due to the feedback that I provided, within the year that I provided that feedback, we were able to see more movies closed caption. And then, of course, there are more than ever before. So, to wrap all this up from our stories, if you have any influence in the decision process, be sure that the solution can actually accommodate most of your users. Consider how well do your existing accessibility tools interact with the software. We actually have more options to choose from now than we ever had in the past. It's okay to start with a baseline to ensure that the tools can work. As technology evolves, we should always be asking if there are ways that we can improve, as it never should stop. As you saw from my example earlier, the Jamf training catalog had closed caption already. The user experience was poor. The training catalog user experience was improved because of the feedback that I was able to provide. We also never want to assume that someone may have already provided the accessibility feedback or it will be improved at some point. We just can't really afford to think that way. So please don't shy away from communicating with the vendors for a specific reason when the accessibility tools do not interact well with their solution.
When you have existing team members that have visible or non-visible disabilities, it's a good idea to check with them first what they might need with respect to accommodations so that they can be successful within your organization. Don't make assumptions as to what you think they might need. Take the time to ask them, as it's much better to get it from the person themselves so that they can be successful in their work or their school or whatever endeavor they're going to be trying to accomplish. So don't put the limitation on the individual. Let the individual be creative and discuss with you their limitations, and they will become more successful when we use this kind of approach. Thank you very much for joining us today at this JNUC conversation about accessibility. I'm Tim Kilburn. Really appreciate you coming. Thanks a lot.